Before we begin, thank you very much to Puna Forager for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Guys, I say thank you every time I plug it, and I'm going to say thank you again. I hope everyone has been enjoying the daily content. I hope it's been fun. I hope it's been unpredictable. I hope it has been enlightening, because I'm trying to be more informative these days. And I'm trying to give you things that don't require me to just like ramble on about a toy, but we can just sit here and enjoy Transformers as a genre. So I hope everyone has been enjoying, because I've been enjoying doing it. So I thought we'd keep the enjoyment going and revisit another concept that I have been doing lately, which is, and as this border is just a little bit off. Thank you. OCD kicking in. So we're back to the well of concept art and production photography, and this is going to be more focused on what existing G1 characters were almost going to look like in their original production stages. So rather than unproduced characters and all this, everyone you're going to see in this video was released in some way or form, but they might not look anything like you remember them, or it just might have a surprising color scheme, like Rekgar here in black and orange, which honestly doesn't look too bad on him. So before we really kick this off, thank you again to my friends over at TFRaw.com for providing the material. Please go check them out. They have a ton of great archival stuff, preserving a lot of Transformers production history. It's a really, really cool resource. So, along with Rekgar here, and what I actually do think is not a bad color scheme at all. Hey, where was Fun Pub on this? We also have extremely tiny, so it is blurry, the prototype of the Sharkticon, which you can see is a lot simpler. You can see the legs work very differently. They don't seem to have the same slide that they did before. And yeah, again, orange. We were going orange heavy in the movie, apparently, at one time. This one I don't like as much, but I do think it's interesting to see the Sharkticon a little bit sleeker. He's not that big meatball that he ended up being. So honestly, like, form-wise, I don't mind it. Visually, yeah, the orange here I don't think works as well. But hey, that's just a personal preference. We have a few others that are a little bit different than you remember. Here is Hardhead's original concept. You can see it's a familiar looking tank, but very different, far more realistic colors. But you can see him in there, can't you? The sideways cannon and where the pilot seat is. That's all familiar. And then we have Crosshairs here. And Crosshairs to me is a fascinating one, because the white and the blue with those heavy wheels actually makes him look more like a lunar lander, or like a lunar buggy, which, actually makes sense of his weird alt mode. I actually really, really like that better than just the straight up blue futuristic car we got. I think this is actually a more interesting design. So that's the world of color schemes, but there's also modifications. So once again, going heavy on the orange, this is our original Fortress Maximus. Look at this. Look at the absolute Chad we have going on here. Look at that manly mustache going all the way to the mutton chops. Like, he is rocking it. You can definitely see the character here, but obviously extremely different with all the different colors going on. And I'm not even sure who the mini characters are. If they were like I assume before the characters we got with Fort Max, that these were originally kind of like Scamper, like built-in vehicles that were supposed to go with it. You can see their vehicle modes in the feet here. Too bad we never got them. So there's some lost characters for you. Now, originally, Fort Max had a few other designs going on, too. This is where we're going to get into more, like, the altered designs going on. You can see the different designs on the heads that they had tried here. I do prefer the one we actually got. These don't have, like, that big, like, powerful appearance that the eventual ones went on to have. I'm actually surprised a lot of these designs have alternate heads that were never used anywhere else. You'd think, like, if a design is good, you'd figure out somewhere to reuse it. So this one is going to be a little bit familiar. You might not recognize him right away. It's going to be, he's look a little bit different than how you know him. But if I go to the next slide, you can definitely figure out who it's supposed to be. This is Punch Counter Punch, and the original design for his Autobot mode, which I actually don't mind at all. I think he looks pretty good that way. He's gigantic back feet, but hey, he doesn't look too bad. And you can see where like they're trying for a more dynamic alteration between the two, and that all works well and fine. But then there's this guy, and this one you probably don't recognize at all. So he's very standard for an Autobot. You know, he's got the wheels on the shoulders, he's got the chest going down from the front of the vehicle, rear end becomes the legs. All that's pretty typical. Until I show you that he has a Decepticon mode. And unlike Punch Counter Punch, they're really not hiding the fact that it's the same guy. So, two heads going on here. The faction symbol is switched, and then just a ton of spikes and blades coming out. That's him as a Decepticon. It looks like some weird like power-up Energon form or something. It's a bizarre take, but also I kind of wish this had happened. I kind of find it weird that the Double Spy was an Autobot concept and the Decepticons didn't have anything like that. It's also one of the few gimmicks that only one side of the war tried. Like it's basically the equivalent of like Duocons, where only Decepticon ones exist. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one, but I kind of like it. I kind of like everyone was going for. All right, so this one you probably recognize, but it is really weird with the head. This is Overlord. You can see it with the shoulders, and you can see the tank becoming the legs and all that. And he's holding a tank barrel for or a tank turret for a gun, but it's that head. It's a very like strangely broadside head for some reason, but in the original concept, it was still going to become a Blackbird and a tank. So it basically did maintain that much, and you can see a lot of Overlord in there. It's just that weird head. It's just weird seeing him with just a visor and a faceplate. It's just not what we're used to. There's a few others here. Here's our original look at Inferno. This is back in the Diaclone days. You can see he's far more detailed, bigger feet, and way more heavily armed. Those wings on the sides of his head, no, those are gone. More and more cannons, please. This one just amused me because of how much more armed he is, considering he transforms into a rescue vehicle of all things. But it is from Diaclone. And if you see like modern Diaclone, they love adding guns. They love adding armaments to their everything. I showed these off before, but this is a more appropriate video for them. So originally, Action Master's concept was going to be armor that transformed into a weapon rather than a transforming partner figure. I do like that they switched gears on that, because it does mean that we got more of a character who transforms as an aspect. But there is something weird and enjoyable about this too. Like Optimus Prime gaining lion armor is a little bit odd. But I think as a kid, I would have been way into this. Also, it seemed like you could mix and match them because they all seem to have a pretty universal structure to them. You see a cast of Autobots here with all sorts of different mammals. And then we add in like insects and more dangerous creatures here. You see Megatron with a big bat helmet. This kind of stuff is interesting to me because it's so radically different from what we got. So another shot of a city former. This time it's Metroplex. You can see the base robot pretty much stay the same. Again, it's more about the head that changed. Also, he's a little bit more heavily armed. The cannon on his upper right shoulder is way bigger here than it would end up being eventually. Yeah, but not too bad. Not too different here. But his original concept, so I guess they didn't have any idea for what to do with ramps. Now, to be fair, this was lumped in with Fort Max Metroplex in the Google Drive, so I'm not entirely sure where this guy ends up. If this is a completely different character, or if this is one or the other in their original form. But there's a little bit of Metroplex in him, just a little bit. A little bit of Fort Max too, with the ramps on the arms. I'm happy this one didn't come out. This one's weird. Like aside from just he's pretty dumpy. He's pretty squat, honestly. But I don't know, like just having roads for legs, I think would be a little bit off-putting as far as like an overall design goes. All right, so who we at here? Okay, so original concept for Megatron. Not too different. Again, it's mostly about a different head. I do think it's interesting that the gun barrel apparently, at one time was going to be a shoulder cannon, which was, obviously changed out. And there's no trace of his arm cannon here. There's a slot. You could see the extra kibble on his arm where it would go, but apparently was not factored into his actual robot mode at the time. Of course, that changes later on. We got his famous fusion cannon. Ironically, that means that G2 Megatron relocating his cannon from his arm to his shoulder actually isn't incorrect, as that was originally where it was supposed to go. So that, I think, is an interesting little bit. Also, a little bit more blue in this design, too. So, G1 Megatron, not the most colorful guy. And just to be fair, here's the original Optimus Prime concept, or convoy, I guess, since we're back to the Diaclone. Pretty much the same, wider shoulder stance, and then the wheels were going to be on the feet rather than just up on the legs. It's about the head here. The head is close to the original design, but again, like it feels like a lot of this concept art had these wide ears that always got canceled. I don't know why. Like, it's just they were trying really hard to get wide ears to be a thing, and it never really worked. Probably because it's much harder to fold away a head when it's sticking out this far. But it's interesting to me that it's a design element that Takara kept going back to that, to my knowledge, never made it into a G1 Transformer. I can't think of any with wide ears off the top of my head. Off the side of my head, rather. So, we're going to go into Power Master Optimus Prime and his original concepts. So, here, he looks kind of like Power Master Prime. The head there, you can see, has the right details and all that. The cannons coming off his arms. The thing is, when you look at the bottom of the legs, does it look a little bit familiar? Do the legs, like, strike a little bit different to you than it should for Power Master Prime? If I show you the vehicle mode, it'll probably help, because he was very Ultra Magnus when they first showed it off. Keep in mind, originally, when the mold we know now as Ultra Magnus was Powered Convoy in Diaclone. It was the same character, just with a powered up suit. So revisiting that concept for Power Master Optimus Prime, it originally kicks off as an extension of that idea. So yeah, car carrier, very Ultra Magnus and stylings. To be fair, this actually could just be Ultra Magnus in the original concept for that, but it's lumped in with the Power Master Prime because you can see, like, the cab section there absolutely does look like Power Master Prime. So whether it's the first concept art for Ultra Magnus, or if it was supposed to be an evolved battle, or evolved powered convoy, not sure. Interesting design nonetheless. Let's get into something that's definitely Power Master Prime. This one is... There's a few different concept arts out there for what the toy would end up looking like. I wanted to focus mostly on this one because it's got the most fascinating element to me. So he looks mostly correct here. He's got all of his guns in the right spots. The robot mode, the base mode look pretty much the way we know them. What's different here is the head. Now, in the original, what happened on the Power Master Prime toy is the head is just a separate piece that you'd have to keep track of and then plug on when it was time for the super mode. Always hated that as a kid. Always lost the head. However, originally, the concept was going to be Roller. Roller was going to not only be part of the package, but also transform into, one, his own robot, and two, Power Master Prime's head. And I way prefer this design idea. Like, even if it's I think it should have been way smaller than this, so Prime didn't have a whole bunch of tires behind his head. That doesn't look too cool. But just the idea, because headmasters were a thing at the time, and Roller is strangely absent from the Power Master Prime package. Now, granted, in Japan, it's Jinrai, it's a different character, but it's supposed to emulate Prime. And it's the one aspect of Prime that it does not emulate. I really wish this had happened in some way, shape, or form. Not only because it gives Roller something to do, but also because it gives that head something to do instead of just floating around and getting lost in your toy bin. And one more for this one, because he was originally way more armored and way heavier with the God Jinrai pack than, the God Bomber pack than we originally saw. It's he's a little bit crazy here, and a lot of the I can't go through all of the the God Bomber designs because we got something else that's going to take a lot of time here at the end. But it's interesting to see like Optimus Prime so heavily armed. That was funny to me. So who is this? Now some of you have already actually like seen all this artwork. That's no surprise to you. But for those who are uninitiated, who do you see here? So, golden blue. Okay, we see that big heavy chest. Got this like springy design, weird thing to his arms. This is a character. It's a popular character. Yeah, everyone. Most Transformer fans know him, and he has like pretty like significant reverence in a lot of fiction that he's featured in. Uh, one of the most unique Transformer characters there is, really. You give up, you give up. This is Six Shot. Or rather, it is one of the design concepts that was originally going to end up being Six Shot. This was when Takara was basically just trying to figure out how do we get as many designs in as many vehicle modes into one toy as possible. So they just start throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And this was one of them that eventually led to the development of Six Shot, which includes things like this big tank mode that's very Cybertron uh, defense scatter shot. See, a snake, or technically a dragon because it's got those arms hanging off, but that's never saw a Six Shot do that. Battleship mode, or actually aircraft carrier. Let me be correct here. Let me not offend my nautical military fans out there. Very boxy, unaerodynamic jet mode, and that was it. That's about as far as that concept got. So back to the beginning, back to the drawing board, literally. Let's try it again. Here we have someone with V6 written on his chest. It's kind of like V8, but 2 vegetables less. So this one is a lot more like cobbled together. You can see a lot more just like, it's not as clean. It's not as clean, but it's more functional because they get more modes out of this one. There's a dinosaur mode. Okay, that's fine. We have a suspicious amount of car parts in the dinosaur mode, but that comes later. A car gun. You can't really get away from the car in this one. The tank mode looks pretty good. It's a drill tank, so a little bit of great shot mixed in a little early. Or am I thinking great shot, or am I thinking quick switch? I think I'm thinking quick switch now that I think of it. Apologies for that. Let's 6-9. Let's go obscure. The car mode. They were apparently the design on this one was really adamant to getting one of the vehicles to look realistic, so he still had some of that robot in disguise part. And the car was it, but you can see where it pollutes the other modes. And even in the jet mode looks okay. You can still see car bits because there's just nowhere to put any of it. This one got pretty close, so this one's got a lot of modes going on. I do think it's a much messier design than even the gold one we just saw. Here's another one. It's getting closer to what we know as Six Shot. It's a little bit more plain. It's not as interesting. It kind of comes across as like a repaint of like Quake. it's not terribly different, but we've got a car mode here. See, we got a tank mode. Tank mode doesn't look too bad. A rhino mode. Again, we'd have a 6-changer that featured that later on. The jet mode looks not too bad considering it's got treads hanging off the back. And another dinosaur mode. Alright, so this one's doing pretty good. Like, this is where we're getting much closer. And honestly, I wouldn't mind this one actually coming out. He looks pretty solid. But we come to this concept, and this is where we finally see Six Shot in the design. The wheels are in the right place, the kibble for the different modes is in the right spots. The color scheme is interesting, because it's gold and red is far more of a heroic color scheme than what we ended up with, so it very may well have been he wasn't intended to be a Decepticon at first. Speculation on my part, I admit. The head, again, very different from what we ended up getting. You can see the mouth plate. You can see a mustache. So, once again, just trying to be the manly man robot. And again, ears going outward. There are more horns here, but still. But this one is far more familiar. All right, so yeah, we get a beast mode, the winged wolf. See, we get the car mode looks pretty much the same. The gun mode, the tank mode. This is all pretty stock standard. We pretty much know this is what ended up becoming 6-shot, and of course, radically different color scheme once we did. I think it is fascinating though because Generation Selects is a thing. BotCon and FunPub was a thing for a long time. We had a 6-shot mold in Titan's Return, and I'm actually kind of surprised with all of Hasbro's rush and panic to actually release as many versions of molds as possible, why we only got one retool out of that when something like this cool looking was actually available. And this is kind of the like super obscure stuff that we get a lot of times from those sources, Nacelles and such. I would be perfectly happy to see this on a toy shelf at some time, or more precisely to see on a virtual toy shelf exclusively at Amazon or something like that. And that is what I have for you today. G1 takes on a lot of different faces and goes through a lot of design processes before we get to what we got as a toy line. And I think it's fascinating to go through to see what we almost got. I don't know if I got enough material left for another one of these. Might have to dig up another source or two. But I do like these history dives because they bring up so many interesting conversations and so many like what could have been scenarios that I think are fun to talk about. So, thank you guys for watching. As always, hit like and hit subscribe. I will be back tomorrow with yet another video, and I hope you are there for it. So, until then. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.